now on Constitution Avenue. We're taking you to the front lines in the fight against fentanyl.
We are seeing it everywhere.
And it's here at the Mexican border where we came to see firsthand what the U.S. is doing to stop the drugs from coming into the country, disrupting families and costing lives.
This can happen to anyone. This can happen to any family.
The synthetic opioid is killing tens of thousands of people each year.
It doesn't care for who you are. It impacts everyone.
Ahead, a new warning to parents as this country desperately races to control the fentanyl crisis.
We the people
of the United States,
in order to
form a more perfect
union,
and establish this Constitution
for
the United States of America.
Hi everyone, I'm Blair Miller, here along the border of Arizona and Mexico. This is the front line of America's fight against fentanyl. It's also where this drug is coming into our country at an alarming rate, and it's killing people from all walks of life, in big cities and in small towns. And the numbers are jarring, to say the least. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, fentanyl is now the leading cause of death for people who are 18 to 45 years old. And just recently, the DEA seized more than 379 million lethal doses of fentanyl, enough to kill each and every American. And that's why we came here to the border. We wanted to get an up-close look at what the U.S. is doing to stop the drug from ending up in our towns, and what it will take to keep people from dying. Welcome to Nogales, Arizona, a small town that sits 2.5 hours south of Phoenix and right along the border with Mexico. Nogales is largely known for its port of entry to the U.S. That means a prime gateway for Mexican drug cartels. Right now, more fentanyl is coming in through Arizona than any other state in the country. And in this region, they've seized more fentanyl in the last 3 months of 2022 than the entire year before that. How concerning is that to you?
That's very concerning.
Michael Humphreys is the port director here in Nogales for U.S. Customs and Border Protection. He showed me what his field operations officers are up against. The semi-trucks that come through here face random searches for fentanyl, and that means offloading all of the produce and officers going through it before loading it all back on. Officers showed me how they recently found about 776,000 fentanyl pills hidden inside compartments built into the roof of this 18-wheeler.
The potential for millions or hundreds of thousands coming through at once.
On the other side of the port, a backup of cars as far as the eye can see, with people coming into America, each one facing questions and scrutiny.
Luggage, jacket.
The officers, the dogs, the random x-rays of entire cars, all of it's being used to try and curb the fentanyl crisis in America.
Some of these concealment methods these officers here are finding haven't been seen before.
And they showed us the new tactics being used. In January, officers found this, 19,000 fentanyl pills taped to the legs of a person trying to get it into the U.S. They say it's also not uncommon to find pills hidden inside car parts, like the 200,000 fentanyl pills and 2 pounds of fentanyl powder concealed inside the back seat of a vehicle. They've even found more people trying to hide thousands of pills inside their body cavity.
And they're just looking down in here. Are the dogs out? What are they doing? Are they opening trunks?
While the focus is largely on what comes into this country, officers say the cartels are usually eager for what comes back. Drug payments are usually in the form of bulk American cash, guns, and ammunition. They found this man trying to cross the border with an AK-47 stuffed down his pants.
We're seeing assault rifles, AK-47s, AR-type rifles, trying to get back into Mexico.
Are they deterred by what's happening here?
Well, their livelihood, they want money, depends on it. So they're trying new ways all the time.
You've likely heard about fentanyl in your community, but it's important to know more about the drug. It's a synthetic opioid similar to morphine, but it's estimated to be 50 to 100 times more potent. Hospitals use fentanyl, a prescription drug, to treat patients with severe pain. It becomes dangerous when it's manufactured illegally and users feel a heroin-like effect. The CDC says that illegal fentanyl powder is often added to other drugs, which makes them extremely potent and very dangerous. We got the latest data from the White House showing an estimated 107,000 people died from overdoses in a year from August of 2021 to August of last year. That averages out to 293 deaths a day, or even 12 per hour. Most of those deaths linked to an overdose of fentanyl. In Seattle, the King County Medical Examiner's Office says its morgue is running out of space to store bodies, partly due to a rise in fentanyl-related deaths.
They're men and women. They are young and old. We have a much larger proportion who are under 30 than we ever saw with heroin or prescription type opiate.
Officials in Seattle say the problem is expected to get even worse this year. That's an issue seen in cities across the country. And it's the families that are left to struggle. From first-time drug users to long-term addicts, fentanyl doesn't discriminate. Our Kirsten Garris has more on the heartbreak and the cruel realities that loved ones are facing.
He was definitely a mama's boy, no doubt about it.
Across the entire country, from Florida to Washington State.
He was my other half.
These are the faces and families forever impacted by fentanyl.
It was just a nightmare for our family.
Their stories are all unique.
He was too busy saving everybody else instead of saving himself.
But the pain and heartbreak from an overdose death touching each one.
She loved to cheer, sing.
Megan Whitaker's mom says her daughter smoked a joint to help her sleep. Tragically, she never woke up. And her mom says the medical examiner would later say the cause of death was marijuana laced with fentanyl.
They said grief is pent-up love that has nowhere to go.
To show just how lethal even a tiny amount of fentanyl can be, an undercover narcotics officer poured out this packet of sweetener.
It has the potential to overdose 500 individuals.
Many families now turning grief into action, wanting to warn others.
Try to get people to understand how dangerous it is.
This mom passing out bracelets in honor of her son, reminding the community of what's called a Good Samaritan law, urging anyone who sees someone in trouble to call 911.
We've given out almost all of them.
A sad reminder that this potent, tasteless, odorless drug is taking lives by the thousands every single month.
It can happen to absolutely anyone.
I'm Kirsten Garris for Constitution Avenue.
So how has fentanyl ended up in so many communities across the U.S.? Most of the chemical ingredients used to make the drug are shipped from China. From there, these elements are produced and converted into fentanyl. A lot of that happens in Mexico. From there, the cartels determine how potent the drug is and move it into the U.S. through the ports along the border. It then ends up in various parts of the U.S. where dealers move the drug through communities. And it's that threat that's prompted lawmakers back in Washington to call fentanyl a weapon of mass destruction. Drug agencies are racing to destroy these pills. Federal agents took our Carrie Kavanaugh to a place that few ever go to see how these deadly pills are being destroyed.
Piece by piece, deconstructing a deadly threat claiming lives in our state and country every day. We're taking you inside this evidence warehouse in an undisclosed location where cameras have never been allowed before. This is where the Federal Drug Enforcement Agency takes seized counterfeit pills and the machines that make them.
They're taking the pill presses that we've seized and they're decontaminating them.
The crew doing the decon wears hazmat suits.
This is a recent pill press.
This is DEA Special Agent in charge of the New England Field Division, Brian Boyle. And this is a pill press. It can quickly make counterfeit pills, stamping them to look like brand name prescription drugs.
Adderall pills, Xanax pills, painkillers. And what it is really just fentanyl. You could be a pharmacist, you could be a doctor, you look at these pills, you can't tell the difference.
So this one being an electric one, how many pills could it process an hour?
that could process probably 10,000 pills an hour. So you're talking, 100,000 pills a day easily. People are dying. And it could be anybody. Just one pill can kill now.
Let that sink in. One pill can kill.
They don't care about killing the population up here. They don't really care. They're all for making a profit.
In Boston, I'm Carrie Kavanaugh.
Ahead on Constitution Avenue, seizing the drugs is just one part of what happens along the border. How hard is it to pinpoint where it comes from? Next, we're with Homeland Security agents whose job is to trace the fentanyl back to the source in Mexico. Then,
we need a different strategy.
That strategy could keep people from dying. Ahead, the medical breakthrough currently in the works. Join the conversation with us online, where you'll find us on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Just look for Constitution Avenue. Here along the Mexican border, federal officers have shown us how they're seizing the drug and stopping some of it from getting past this checkpoint and into America. But that's just one part of it. We asked Homeland Security to explain what's being done after they find all these drugs. The search and seizure of the hundreds of thousands of pills of illegal fentanyl. Just the one step in trying to stop the drug from getting into the U.S. Last year, Homeland Security arrested and convicted thousands of people on drug crimes. How often can you go back to and find the cartels that are responsible for some of this?
Very often. It might not lead us up to the main kingpin, I would say, but we have ways to corroborate information or find out who's responsible.
Agents point to the man in this picture taken by police in Ecuador. That's where U.S. Homeland Security agents tracked him down. Agents say he was working with one of the cartels in a long-running worldwide plan to traffic substantial amounts of drugs from Central and South America into Mexico and then finally into the U.S. When it comes to the fentanyl, how hard is it to pinpoint where it comes from?
So we know that they're coming from Mexico, but through the course of our investigation, sometimes we learn where the source of supply is coming from. For example, we know the majority of the fentanyl that's being smuggled into the U.S. In Nogales is coming from Sinaloa.
Sinaloa is a Mexican drug cartel. The DEA recently publicly identified the Sinaloa and Jalisco cartels in a hearing before Congress.
Both cartels in Mexico are responsible for the vast majority of fentanyl that is coming into the United States.
There's also a warning about the growing number of young people who are buying tainted pills. They're often turning to social media and messaging apps. Our Tom Regan is in Atlanta with more on the dangers of buying illegal drugs online.
Zach was doing incredibly well, 17, high school senior, loved school, so he had always had really top grades and loved athletics.
Zach Didier, college-bound, thrilled over his future. During Christmas break 2020, he became bored, anxious. The California teen and a friend decided to buy some pain pills they found through a dealer on Snapchat. He told them it was Percocet. 2 days after Christmas, his dad found him in his room unconscious, dead after taking a pill.
He was at his computer and just laid his head down and never woke up.
Mitchell Posey with the GBI says a soaring number of young people and teens here in Georgia are also turning to social media and encrypted messaging apps to buy drugs that too often are poisoned with fentanyl.
The younger generation is comfortable with communicating over social media, navigating in social media, and the same is true for the drug dealers.
We downloaded Telegram, the fastest growing messenger app on the market. We searched drug chat groups and found a multitude of illegal drugs, including pills for sale.
You losing the need to see someone and meet someone in a dark alley.
Georgia State University professor David Maiman researches cybercrime. He says online drug sales have moved from the dark web to social media platforms because Telegram and other sites like it offer end-to-end encryption, which blocks third parties from viewing what's said and sold.
It's just mind-boggling to see how easy it is to just jump on a Telegram channel and purchase any type of drug that your heart desires, including fentanyl.
But many who buy the drugs aren't looking for illicit fentanyl. They're often seeking prescription pain medications and anti-anxiety drugs. It's cheap, easy to buy, and hugely profitable. The DEA seized over 20 million counterfeit pills in 2021, a small fraction of what's on the market. Often they're sold through hookups on social media and messenger apps.
What we're seeing is that it is the wild, wild west. There's not enough regulation on those platforms. Law enforcement have a hard time monitoring what's going on those platforms.
In this September letter, a congressional committee urged the U.S. Attorney General to do more to combat drug sales on social media. The National Drug Control Policy Director says they're asking social media companies to keep drug dealers off their platforms. Zach's parents have made it their mission to educate other parents and young people not to take pills that aren't prescribed by a doctor. One tainted pill can kill.
If it can help kind of put a face, one of many, faces tragically to this crisis, that we know he would want us to do that.
Last month, the FBI and Department of Justice began investigating Snapchat's role in fentanyl deaths. Snapchat says it's added new technology tools to identify and remove illegal drug dealers from its platform. And Telegram tells us they monitor and remove publicly available content promoting drug sales. In Atlanta, I'm Tom Regan for Constitution Avenue. Ahead on Constitution Avenue, real solutions to fighting fentanyl deaths. A vaccine is in the works.
The medications that we have now are not addressing the opioid epidemic.
But how soon could that really be available? And up next, we're going to top White House officials asking what it will take to keep fentanyl from destroying families. What do you think is the biggest hurdle in this fight right now here in the U.S.? When Constitution Avenue returns. While we're here on the front lines of the fentanyl epidemic, we also wanted to know what's being done at the highest levels of government to deal with it. Dr. Rahul Gupta is the nation's drug czar. His job is to oversee the federal response to the drug crisis. I sat down with him to ask how the country can solve the fentanyl problem. A year ago, you called the situation unacceptable, unprecedented. What's changed, you think, in the last year?
Well, I think I've become more hopeful. Because of what we're seeing on the ground. We're seeing about 2.25% reduction in overdose deaths.
I would assume that you have access to data that's, right at your fingertips. But the data that gets out of the public, there tends to lag behind. It's not the real-time data that people might expect. Why is that the case? And how would that help you all if that real-time data was getting out there?
Yeah, I think, Blair, one of the challenges when I came into the office is for the longest time, we have not had real-time or near real-time data of people who are overdosing, knowing that a non-fatal overdose is one of the best predictors for a fatal overdose. And just recently, we launched a public national dashboard where anyone can go up and check what the number of overdoses are in their community at a county level and state level, and they can see what is the response time for those overdoses. And this data is available near real time, about a week to 2 weeks lag.
I think when people see the seizures that have been happening here recently, whether it's by Border Patrol or the DEA, they're significant. You talk about the deaths. Death rate is sky high. What are the bright spots here?
Well, I think some of the bright spots that I believe are, A, we are creating that treatment infrastructure for addiction. We used to treat cancer this way 100 years ago. It was highly stigmatized, lowly funded, and not really taken seriously, and people are dying on the streets. Today, look at where we are with cancer.
What do you think is the biggest hurdle in this fight right now here in the U.S.?
I think it's ourselves. I think it's our stigma to the problem, number one.
I think some people think it's not a real problem.
Exactly. I mean, I like to tell everybody and make sure that people understand addiction is a brain disease, no different than one would have hypertension or heart disease. And we need to begin to treat it like brain disease. We need to understand that people can get treatment.
There could be help on the way. A fentanyl vaccine is being developed right now. It would prevent people from getting high on the drug and could prevent countless deaths. Our Sophia Choi looked into this and found out if this really could be a solution, and if so, how soon.
Doctors say just 2 milligrams can kill you. Now, researchers at the University of Houston in Texas believe they found a solution to this growing crisis, a 3-shot vaccine. But instead of immunity, this one causes your body to develop antibodies to fentanyl.
So when an individual consumes fentanyl, those antibodies will bind to the drug and prevent it from getting into the brain.
Your body will then naturally flush it out of your system. The vaccine's use could be threefold. No high for those hooked on fentanyl.
They intake or consume fentanyl, and they will feel no euphoric effects, and they certainly will not overdose.
Protection for first responders who might come into contact with fentanyl, and protection for those buying street drugs.
We're finding fentanyl in drugs such as cocaine, methamphetamine, ADHD drugs, counterfeit anti-anxiety drugs. So people unknowingly are consuming fentanyl and overdosing. The medications that we have now are not addressing the opioid epidemic. So we need a different strategy.
Right now, this vaccine is only being tested on rats, which showed it works for about 6 months after that initial shot. They hope to start human trials soon. The goal, get FDA approval and get it out to the public in 3 to 4 years. In Atlanta, I'm Sophia Choi for Constitution Avenue.
Next on Constitution Avenue, the lives lost and how the fentanyl crisis is changing some communities forever. When it comes to fentanyl overdoses, so many families have told us it can happen to anyone, and it has. The realities of this crisis are hitting homes and communities both here near the border and all across the country.
He's my world. I'm still waiting on him to walk in the door or to hear, "I love you, Mom."
Fentanyl is in everything now, everything.
We will not sit back and allow you to do this.
We have instances of kids overdosing even in school.
I remember screaming, "Jay, wake up. You can't leave me." Addiction is beyond real. It is a mental health problem.
I would encourage and urge every parent to have a really honest conversation with their children.
And it's that pain that's fueling the work that's being done here. Every week they're seizing fentanyl, arriving at the front doors to America. There are drugs sneaking past these border checkpoints. Lives are being lost, families are being destroyed, and the country is trying to find a solution to help curb the problem, a solution that can't come soon enough. I'm Blair Miller, along the Mexican border in Arizona. Thanks for watching Constitution Avenue.
We the people
of the United States.
In order to form a more perfect
union.
And establish this Constitution
Constitution
for the United States of America.